Good morning, everybody. This is Darren Roberts here from Fusion. We're going to give everybody a chance to log on to the webinar, so we'll give people a chance for maybe a minute before we commence. So I'll pop you on hold for now, and we'll come back in a moment. Thank you. Good morning. So I'm Darren Roberts, Channel Business Manager here at Fusion. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar, 10 questions your customers should answer to be ready for GDPR. I'm going to shortly hand you over to Pierre Westphal, our host for today's webinar. Pierre is an independent privacy implementer, founder of GDPR Consulting. He's got 14 years experience in Microsoft cloud solutions and cloud agreements negotiations. In the past few years, he's been engaged in the data protection discussion with end customers and new Microsoft partners. By establishing his own consulting company, his objective is to support partners and customers in implementing data protection regulation. So just before we start, if you've got any questions during the webinar, please use the Skype Q&A, and we'll collate any questions you may have throughout the webinar. And then at the back of the webinar, we'll create a Q&A fact sheet, and then we'll obviously make that available for everybody. So I'm going to hand over now to Pierre, who will present your today's webinar. Over to you, Pierre.
Thank you, Darren. Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I am French. I hope you will forgive my accent. I'll be as specific and understandable as possible about the GDPR. Okay, so the idea of the session is really to help you to present and make sure your customer understands what are the 10 major questions about GDPR they should answer today to be ready in 2018. So we, as an agenda, we're going to go over those 10 questions and then help you to measure where your customers sit in GDPR implementation. We have developed for you a specific survey that you can run with your customers and see where are the limits of your customers today on GDPR implementation. As a result of the survey, we have also workshops and clinics available that could be run to your customers. We have also tried to position Microsoft offers about GDPR, and we will finish with the next steps. So within an hour, we should be at the end of the presentation. And we're going to start now with a quick overview of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. What are we talking about? So to give you the history, this is a very long discussion starting 4 years ago in the European community to better protect the individual rights. And after 4 years of negotiations, it has been finally approved by the European Parliament in 2016. And it will replace, and that's important, all the existing data protection directives you have in the 28 different countries in Europe. So the Data Protection Act in UK will be also replaced by the GDPR. One regulation, one law, effectively applicable on May 25th, 2018. for the 28 state members. It will apply to controllers, meaning your customers, and the processors, meaning the company they are working, the subcontractors that they are working with, as long as we talk about personal data. And this is new. It will apply also to all data processing for organizations located in the EU. So no matter if it's a personal data of your employee or a personal data of a customer, it will apply to all the processing. And it will also apply to all organizations worldwide when we talk about offering goods and services and or monitoring behavior of an EU resident. And this is important because the idea of the GDPR is that as long as the data resides the individual resides in the EU, the organization must be in compliance with the GDPR, no matter if it's in the EU or outside of the EU. If there is an offering of goods, it must be compliant to GDPR. It will only apply on May 25th, so until then, we are still under the local legislation in each country. So the DP Act still applies today. But it's time to get ready because we have less than a year. And for some of your customers, it can be really a lot of work and a big challenge. So to help you about GDPR, the last thing you need to know also, it's about the Brexit. It won't change so much. The ICO has been very specific here, saying that the GDPR comes into force on May 25th, 2018, and the Brexit won't happen before. So the EU law will apply earlier. Second point is that, as I said, the GDPR applies to EU citizens' data, regardless of where the controlling and the processing of the data takes place, which means that countries outside of the EU, can be the US, but it can be also an independent UK, would have to comply GDPR for client data, where the client is in the EU. The three reason is that after Brexit, the UK would have to introduce an equal replacement if it is decided to revert to existing data protection regulation, which would be simply the GDPR under a different name. And finally, in terms of competition, matching the GDPR standard will certainly help to attract global data-centric businesses in UK. So there is no reason to think that with Brexit, UK will go back to the current DP Act. So now let's go to the questions itself. And the first question you should ask to your customer is about awareness and legal impact. Yes, is the decision maker of your customer aware of that the law is changing with the GDPR? There are many changes coming. The individual rights will be strengthened, and we'll go over that. There is new concept for controllers' duties, such as transparency, consent requirements, stricter than before. Privacy by design, a big challenge for all our customers. Accountability, data protection officer, the DPO, as we say. The data breach notification is also something that will be very important. And finally, in terms of security, the pseudonymization, which will be part of the Privacy by Design Foundation. If there is one thing your CEO or decision maker and your customer must be aware of, it's about the penalty, which will go up to 4% turnover or £20 million, whichever the greatest is. And the local authority really wants those penalties to be effective, proportionate, and dissuasive. And as an example, I've copy-pasted some cases you see today on the ICO website on fines paid by some organization. And you see that it can be large organization, SMB, but also individuals. If you look at it, you see that a lawyer has been fined for £1,000 for storing data on his home computer. And this is exactly where personal data regulation is. Make sure that those data are not breachable. And in terms of liability and accountability, the controller, meaning your customer and more precisely your decision maker, the CEO, will be liable for the damage caused by processing which are not in compliance with the GDPR. This is important because the CEO will be the one to be prosecuted if there is a breach. Processors will also be accountable respectively to their implications, meaning that if they have an agreement with the controller for a specific process, they will be accountable for that process. So as a controller, sorry, there is a typo here. You need to read controller, meaning your customer. As a controller, your customer must understand the importance of be aware of that, of the regulation, train the key stakeholders in its organization, and also, I think that's good advice, to train also all the employees on GDPR. GDPR is about individual rights. It's about you, me, everybody to understand, what is it to protect your private life or private data. So it makes sense to set up a workshop to make sure that all employees are aware of the new regulation. And avoiding damage to reputation is even bigger than paying the fee, I guess, the fine. So I would say this is also something the CEO should think about. Having the reputation to breach the regulation is never good for the business. So let's move to the second question. So the second question is about data processing principles. And your customers should be able to answer of how do they apply the principles within the company, as a company, but also as an employee. And here the regulation is very, very strict. There are 6 major principles any controller should apply when processing personal data. The first one is about lawfulness, fairness, and transparency to the data subject. And here it's about processing in a very transparent way the data of any individual by providing information notice mentioning what's going to be done with those data. It must also it's important also to specify the purpose limitation, and this purpose must be explicit and legitimate. As an example, if your customer is a car insurance company, there is a legitimate interest or purpose to have the driving license number of their customer, and they need to make transparent to their customer the purpose of using the driving license number. The storage limitation, the idea here is to make sure that the data is stored for no longer than it's necessary. So if the driving license number is not necessary anymore, it must be removed and erased from the data. Data minimization The idea here is about making sure that the data is adequate, relevant, and limited to those which are necessary in relation to the purpose for which they are processed. Again, a bank would not need the driving license number, right? So they would have, if a file is used by a car insurance and sent, if a bank is, let's say, if a bank is selling insurance, car insurance, and they would have to remove this data from their bank system, bank account system. They would not need the driving license number. Accuracy and up to date. Again, the data need to be erased and rectified without delay if they are not up to date. So, and the last one is integrity and confidentiality. Here we talk about pseudonymization, security, make sure that the data cannot be breached, and the controller is using security system to maintain the security. So as a controller, your customer really need to review the data protection policies in place for the current and planned data processing activities. Indeed, it's not because the regulation will start in May 2018 that the current activities doesn't have to be compliant. So the work to be done today is really to review all the existing processing and see what needs to be done to be compliant. So your customer will have also to apply the right security measures. He will have to update the internal code of conduct and train employees to ensure these are consistent with the revised principle. In the process of collecting the data, the controller will have to provide information notices, right? And in the information notices, all those principles will have to be listed. If you go to some website today, I've checked 2 days ago in one called Sky Scanner. It was interesting to see that they have now an information notice of a very long one, and they are exactly, you know, going through all the different principles of that are listed here. And finally, a big idea in the regulation is the accountability. The controller must be at any time able to demonstrate that he is compliant with those principles. And you will see for each questions, the compliance to the GDPR is one major point to be achieved by the controller. Question 3 is about individual rights. So we talked about controller duties. Now we talked about individual rights. And here, it's important to ask your customer if the company has the correct procedures and forms to ensure that they can deliver the rights to individuals under the GDPR. Indeed, those rights have been strengthened, and some are new, others have been changed a little bit. The first one is about accessing the personal data upon request. In the UK, before, the individual had to pay for it, and the controller was charging the individual. Now it's for free, so it's new. The individual also has the right to have the inaccuracies corrected. So after asking for their information, they could ask the controller to correct the inaccuracies. They have also the right to ask for erasure. That's what we call the right to be forgotten. That's really one of the big new rights of the individuals. They can also ask for the restriction of processing, meaning they can only ask to have one part of the data processed and the other part not processed. They can object for processing. This is new. They can also ask the controller to port their data to a new organization. Meaning if they contract with another organization they could ask their previous, if they change, for instance, they change insurance company, they could ask their previous insurance company to port their data to the new insurance company. They can also withdraw consent at any time, and that's a concept we'll see later. They can also lodge a complaint with the supervisory authority if there is a breach. And they have also the right to be informed of the purpose and legitimate interest of the processing, and when the data will be erased, corrected and limited, and if the data are used for automated decision making, including profiling. So all those rights has to be clearly listed in the information notice the controller will set. The controller has also will have also to provide those data in compliance with the GDPR's format obligations for each of those rights. It may be necessary to develop formatting capabilities to meet access requests. This should be done in an automated way, and also develop the templates response letter for each of those rights to ensure that all the elements of supporting information are provided. So you see there is a lot of work to be done here by the controllers, and this needs to be in place by next May 2018. And in terms of accountability, again, the controller at any time must be able to demonstrate the GDPR compliance. So a lot of work and a lot of challenges for the controller here. Next question is to ask your customer is about sensitive data. So we have two types of data in the regulation. We have the personal data and we have sensitive personal data. Personal data are information about yourself, which can be used to identify who you are. So it can be your name and address. And when someone on your phone asks you for those information, this is personal data and it falls under the regulation. But sensitive data are much more personal, as you can see. We talk about racial, ethnic origin, political opinions, and so forth. Two new ones have been added, genetic data and biometric data. And all those sensitive personal data are prohibited by default in the regulation. Now, if your customer as a controller wants to use them, he must require specific consent from the person, and he must have a legitimate purpose. If your customer is insurance company and they are selling a life insurance contract, they might need to have information about the health of your customer. That's legitimate to have this information, right? So they will need to require the consent of the individual to have this information. And if they don't want to have the consent, if there is an audit from the local authority, they need to be able to demonstrate the legitimacy of the purpose. The use of those personal sensitive personal data require also the data protection impact assessment, which is a process to measure the risk of using those data. We'll talk about later, but this is also one of the big ideas of the regulation. It will also require consultation to the legal supervisory authority for feedback. So anytime your customer is using sensitive personal data, they need to have a DPIA in place, and they need to send this DPIA to the local supervisory authority to get their feedback. And again, they will be accountable for any, to demonstrate any legitimate use of sensitive personal data. Question 5 is about consent requirement. We already talked a little bit about it in the sensitive data. It is required for sensitive data. It's also required for children information under the age of 16. And it's also required when data are transferred outside of the European Union. In terms of requirement itself, the regulation has strengthened the way to require consent. What they want, what the law says today is that the consent is active and does not rely on silence, inactivity, or predict boxes. It must be also distinguishable and in clear language. It cannot be bundled with other written agreements or declaration. So basically here you cannot have the consent bundled with the use rights of a website, for instance. It must be taken out of those use rights and clearly presented to the individual. It's also one consent per processing operation. So basically, if there is sensitive personal data used and there is also data transfer outside of the EU, the controller will require the consent for sensitive personal data processing and also the consent for data transfer outside of the EU. So it will be two consents. The consents can be withdrawn very easily and be proposed by default to the individual. And again, for the person under the age of 16, for the children under the age of 16, it requires also the consent of a parental responsibility, a person with parental responsibility, sorry. So again, for your customer, it might be also a lot of work. And what they need to do is to ensure that their consent process in place is GDPR compliant. They need to review how they currently obtain and record consent and have it compliant to the GDPR right now. And again, in terms of accountability, they will have to be able to demonstrate any compliance to GDPR. Question 6 is about data breach. It's also a big idea of the GDPR. You need to ask your customer if they have the right procedures in place to detect, report, and investigate a personal data breach. As a controller now, they must, if there is a breach, they must notify the supervisory authorities without undue delay, or in any event within 72 hours after discovery. So it was not the case before. And they need also to notify the data subject, the individuals, without undue delay, if there is a high risk to their rights and freedoms. For example, when the breach might leave them open to financial loss. And also in terms of data breach notification, we'll talk about it later, but the processors, if your customer is contracting with a processor, must report personal data breaches to the controller. So there will be a big obligation for the processors here. So as a controller, it's important now that your customer ensure they have all the mechanism in place to assess and report relevant breaches to the supervisory authorities, and maintain an internal breach register. Any failure to report a breach will result in a fine. And in terms of accountability, they must be able to demonstrate that they have all the mechanism in place to be GDPR compliant. Question 7 is about high risk and DPIA, data protection impact assessment. We talked about it a little bit before. And the question you need to ask your customer is if they are using a process to identify and reduce the privacy high risk of a project. Here we talk about high risk to the rights and freedoms of an individual, right? And it's mandatory to have a DPIA for two major type of processing. We talk about regular and systematic monitoring of data subject on a large scale, and the idea of large scale is important, and sensitive personal data on a large scale. The G29 Working Party, which is a group of all the countries representative working on the GDPR, created during the negotiation of the GDPR, has defined guidelines on how the DPIA should apply within the GDPR. So this is a document that your customer need to have to check if they are eligible or if they need to comply to the DPIA process. When there is a DPIA, the controller and also the processor, if there is one, have to appoint a DPO, a data protection officer, because here we are processing high risk information or high risk data. It is important to make sure that a certified person will set up all the mechanism and processes for those sensitive information. And when there is a DPIA, that's what I said earlier, the controller must notify the supervisory authority for guidance and adequacy to reduce the risk of processing. So as a controller, again, there's a lot of work to do here. Again, review the existing or planned data processing activities with internal stakeholders is the first thing to do. And then they need also to map data flows within their organization by system and by process to see the level of risk they would have. Using the guidance from the G29 Working Party is important, and they need also to identify any compliance risk. In that case, they would need to appoint a DPO in their organization. We'll talk about the DPO a bit later. And the accountability to the compliance is crucial here. And if there is a breach, the local authority will check if the DPA has been well defined. So we have been so far talking about concepts, I would say, and here in the question 8, we are touching, I think, the biggest challenge of every organization to implement the regulation. You need to ask your company if they have implemented the appropriate technical and organizational measures to implement GDPR principles. That's what we call the privacy by design. And basically what it is to implement those techniques and measures directly in the system to automate it as much as possible. And it requires 4 major, it requires a lot of investment, and there are 5 main measures to be implemented. The first one is the data protection policy, which is basically all the formatted documents to comply to the regulation. We talk about the access request, the consent requests, those kind of formatted documents. We talk about DPI and high risk. We talk about data breach, of course, and we talk also about pseudonymization as a privacy technique to protect from unauthorized or unlawful processing, loss, destruction, or damage. And the last one is accountability. I've been mentioning it many times in the previous questions. Here, in the privacy by design, your customer must be able to demonstrate the compliance of the processing activities. So it might not be the case for all your customers, but if they are contracting with a processor, your customer must be able to answer to these questions. Is your agreement with your processors still aligned with GDPR? Indeed, the GDPR imposes high duty of care upon controllers in selecting their personal data processing service providers. And the obligations of the data processor derive from the obligations of the data controller. And the processors have now their own legal framework with obligations, which are basically to process only undocumented instruction from the controller. The second one is they have to appoint a representative if they are not located in the EU, and that can easily be the case if you think about some subcontractor you would have located in India or in other country. They will need to have a representative in the country, in the EU zone. They would have, it's not mandatory, but they can also appoint a data protection officer. They need to cooperate with the supervisory authority if there is an audit. They need to observe confidentiality, and they have to assist controller in data protection policy. So maintenance of records of processing activities, security measures, personal data breach notification, as I already mentioned, availability to the controller of all information to demonstrate compliance, and delete or returns all the personal data to the controller after the end of provision of services. And in case they would like to engage another processor, they can't do it without the authorization of the controller. So that's the main obligations of the processor. And as a controller, the advice is really here to make sure that they select and sign with a trustful and reliable processor, providing sufficient guarantees, mentioning the legal information such as the subject matter, the duration of the processing, the nature and purpose of the processing, the type of personal data and categories of data subject. But they also need in their agreement to scope the processor's responsibilities and activities, and the mechanism for resolving disputes on the respective liabilities to settle compensation claims. Those things are not mandatory, but this is something that is coming out of all the discussions on contracting with a processor, and specifically in the cloud solution. It is important to have in the agreement those two warranties well specified. Another thing that might also impact your customer as a controller is they must be prepared to share the type of personal data and categories of data subjects they will ask the processor to store, right? The processor is now accountable for the GDPR, so they might want also to know exactly what type of data they are processing. And in case you are not able to handle all the data subject requests, you could maybe engage the discussion with your data processor and have it included in your agreement. It might add it might need an additional cost, but this is something you could also add in your agreement. So again, accountability to demonstrate GDPR compliant with the processor. So you must be able to show the agreement you have in place with your processor to the legal authority. Question 10 is the DPO, the Data Protection Officer. So you need to ask your customer if they have designated a DPO, if it's required, because it's not for all the case, or is someone in their organization playing that role. It is important because in some case, the DPO is required. If your customer is a public authority, they need to have a DPO. If your customer is carrying out large-scale systematic monitoring of individuals, large scales of processing of special categories of data, or if they are carrying data relating to criminal conviction and offenses, they need to have a DPO. The DPO duties is really to inform and advise the organization about obligation to comply with the GDPR. He will also monitor compliance to the GDPR and be the first point of contact to supervisory authorities and for individuals. So he will be really leading the application of the GDPR inside of the organization. The DPO must operate independently and is not dismissed or penalized for performing their task. So he won't be accountable for compliance. The controller remain accountable to demonstrate compliance to the GDPR. So as a controller, again, you need to see if you need a DPO or not. You have to, if you don't require a DPO, it's a good idea and it's highly suggested to have someone having ownership and responsibility for managing data protection compliance. You can have a DPO internally or also contract with someone external. And that person should be reporting to the highest level in your organization. This will have a cost, and you need to make sure that your customer can allocate budget for this role. Last question. It's not 10, it's 11, but that's the last question. And it might not be applicable for all of you. It's about data transfer. And the question you need to ask your customers, if their organization operates internationally outside of the EU, how their data transfer mechanism are compliant to GDPR. That's a key question, a key question in the regulation, and I think that the entire idea of this new GDPR has come from all the cases we have heard about information leakage moving to the US or other countries, right? And the idea is really to make sure that the level of protection is guaranteed when the data goes outside of the EU. No matter if it's between processors or if it's between processors or controllers, any case must comply to the regulation. One important change is that the transfers based on standard contractual clauses have no longer to be notified or approved by the local supervisory authorities. It was not the case before. All those transfers had to be notified, even if the clauses were standard. Now it's not the case anymore. It has been, this question has been discussed in the negotiation for a long period. The transfers outside of the Eurozone are regulated and restricted in certain circumstances. So we're not going to go into details here. It's too large. But basically, you have two major cases. If the country is authorized to have data transferred and if the country is not authorized, it requires what we call binding corporate rules between the two parties. The case of the US is a bit special, and the regulation has agreed to take the privacy shield mandatory in the US since August 2016, and in replacement of the the previous agreement to be in place for any US organization receiving data from the Eurozone. When and the last point is about a representative being designated in the union if the processor or the controller is not established in the EU. We talked about that a bit earlier. So again, as a controller, your customer really needs to review and map all the data flows, international data flows in place in the organization. They also need to consider BCR, the binding corporate rules for intra-group data transfers. And if they are dealing with US services providers, making sure that those providers have the privacy shield in place. Everything, of course, is about compliance, accountability, and the controller will have to show their compliance if there is an audit. So we're done with the questions, and the way we're going to help you to go over those questions with your customer is over a survey to define where your customers sit in GDPR compliance. We have defined a survey over each topic, and with your customer you can check the level of implementation, level of readiness they have, and this work will conclude on an average position. If they are below the average or above the average. And here we have different type of offers and support to provide you. We have a GDPR workshop of 3 hours that you could run for a customer that is not really aware of the regulation, which would be followed by the assessment workshop and followed by the GDPR clinic. So I'm going to go over those 3 offers, but depending on where your customer sits, you can come with him to him with different workshop and clinics proposal. Okay. So the workshop itself of 3 hours is really to make sure that your audience will understand the legal, the business risk, and the new obligations through examples and case studies in the regulation. The profile of the participant is basically customers with no GDPR implementation, which need to create awareness internally and have their internal staff to be trained on GDPR. That's really the first step before moving to the GDPR assessment. We can propose it open to multiple companies, or we can also propose it corporate inside of your company. That would be, we would have to schedule that in the next weeks or months. The GDPR assessment is really the idea of guiding your customer on assessing the data and defining or determining the level of compliance risk they have. The idea is not to do it for them, it's to guide them and coach them to do it, right? So basically, it's 1 day workshop to be extended if necessary, when we will review existing or planned data processing activities with the internal stakeholders. We will map data flows within the organization by system and by process, and we will identify the compliance risk. The outcome of this workshop will be a report provided with guidance and go-to-market. For this, we really need to have customers with a good awareness and readiness about GDPR, and also a good level of data protection implemented. That's why that would be the second step after the workshop, and that would be directly proposed for the customers with a good, with a rating above the average. The requirements is to have all the data documentation available at the time of the workshop, and the key stakeholders to participate to the workshop, because those people would be key in defining the compliance activities. That's a corporate activity only, and that can be extended with additional consultancy days. And the last one is what we have called the GDPR clinic. It's one dedicated day on 5 different topics, again, to be extended if necessary. So we would have data assessment, DPI and sensitive data, privacy by design, data transfer, and contracting processor. 5 different topics which have been also discussed in the webinar. Objective again is to guide, coach your customers on each topic, and the profile is also customers with a good level of awareness and readiness on GDPR, with a data protection implementation running. And like for the assessment, we need all the information for this workshop and the key stakeholders to participate. The approach is the same. It's a corporate approach with additional consultancy days if required. And all this falls into the methodology we are using in my consulting group with 4 major steps. First one being awareness and education, and the second one and third one flying together between collecting the data and setting the action plan, and the fourth one to maintain and make the customer accountable. And if we position the different clinics and workshops we have, this is where you could have them mapping with the methodology. We're almost done. A few words about Microsoft and GDPR. So Microsoft today is committing on aligning their agreement and product to the GDPR. They want to have their cloud services compliant before May 25th, 2018, and support their customer through their partner over the GDPR journey. Microsoft has taken a principled approach based on privacy, security, compliance, and transparency in the technology and the agreement. The technology that meet customer needs will be about identifying what personal data customers have, the risk level, the sensitiveness, and the purpose, manage the management of the personal data, the protection of the data breach, from the data breach, sorry, the report of data requests and data breaches, and the documentation of the privacy, the policy, sorry. They have updated already the agreement. If you look at the online services terms of the agreement, you can see that since March 2017, they are now GDPR compliant. And if we map the Microsoft offering with the methodology we have presented you, I think that Microsoft offering can simplify privacy and security practices for you over the audit and data collection, the privacy by design, the data subject request management, the data breach notification, the protection, the security, the record keeping of compliance and consent processes. But it will require the combination with the DPO and also services from your IT provider. Because you might have other systems not using Microsoft technology. You will require a single point of contact for the data protection authorities. And you want also to have the privacy by design application led by someone inside of your company. So for your customers here, the combination of the methodology we are proposing and Microsoft product can be a good offer in the future when we have more details about the GDPR implementation inside all the tools that will be implemented in the different Microsoft products such as Azure, Office 365, EMS, and Windows, and also Dynamics. So we are done with the presentation itself. We still have 2 minutes to go, which is great. The next step for you, I think, is really to engage with your customers and work through the survey we have presented you. That survey is named, "Where do you currently sit in GDPR compliance?" So you can use it. The copy will be available by request at the number you have here or by email. And the copy of the presentation also will be available to you by the 26th, which is next Monday, I think. So review the survey. Once the survey is completed with your customer, review it, share it with my consultancy company, and we can define with you what would be the best way for your, let's say, route to compliance for your customer. If the scores are below 50, let's say the average, as I said, the best thing would be to book the GDPR workshop for customer right now. And if the score is above, we can directly go to the assessment workshop with your customer. So I think I'm done now with the different information we wanted to present. Do we still have time to open to question?
Hi, this is Darren again. Thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you to everybody for joining the webinar today. We hope you found it useful. So we've been collating questions on the Q&A page. There's quite a few very interesting questions on there actually, so I think it would take probably too long to go through them here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get yourself, Pierre, to run through those with us, and we'll create a fact sheet and get that available up on our Vusion partner portal and make sure that that's available as soon as possible. So obviously from the last slide there, you've got the phone number and obviously our email address, partners@vusion.cloud. So if you want to request a copy of that, then please just get in touch. But hopefully that's been a very helpful webinar for everybody, and starts to show how important it is to kind of start having these conversations now with your customers. And we thank you very much, and we will look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you, Pierre. Done.